So Rachmaninoff is one of my favorite composers, and he's a lot of people's favorite composer, one of their favorite composers. And some people might snub their nose at Rachmaninoff because they say it's so predictable and so like almost simplistic in the way tunes are made. But you know what? Mozart's music is predictable too. And it's not necessarily the most complex, particularly looking at it from outside, is not the most complex of music written, but the way he wrote is what makes it special. And I feel like Rachmaninoff has many of those qualities. While the music can be, some might say sing-songy or maybe even cheesy, I think he does it in a way where it goes beyond the cheese a little bit. And for that reason, I enjoy it thoroughly, and which is why I'm really excited about making this belted out bassist post on Rachmaninoff from his Second Symphony. This piece I played when I was in college for the first time. It's a fun story because we did it with the conductor Hans Vonk. And it was my second year of school. It was right here actually in the Academy of Music before the Kimmel Center, which is home of the Philadelphia Orchestra now. But before that building was even built. And we played this concert and we all thought it was a disaster because none of the rehearsals seemed to come together. He was really, really strict with the orchestra. And I think all of us were on pins and needles at the concert. So we all left the concert feeling like, oh no, this is kind of going to be a bit of a disaster. And we got the recording and it sounded amazing. The orchestra sounded really good. And that's actually one of my favorite recordings of all time from school, is that performance of Bach's Second Symphony with Hans Vonk. I'm excited about playing this excerpt from the second movement. Really, it's from the second theme of the second movement. It's a really, really nice moment in the music. And I thought what would be a neat, the tune that goes something like that. Or, I don't actually have the music in front of me. I'll get to that in a second. But you know the tune. Or maybe you don't know the tune, in which case you should listen to Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. It's really good. Some people ask, why do you enjoy playing a bass part? Because it's just like, what are you doing? You don't get to play the melody very often. And that's true. Bass players don't get to play the melody very often. However, the work that we do in helping the melody and the harmony and making sure that it actually makes sense and has, it gives the melody context for the story that the melody is telling, makes the bass part quite essential to the music that's being played. I really enjoy this melody because when you add the melody to the bass line, you start to see the importance of the bass line a lot. So I'll just play the bass line by itself. So by itself, it sounds very simple, but when you add that beautiful melody to it, this is do, si, la, sol, la, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, re, do, re, mi, sol, do, si, la, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, sol, fa, mi, re, do, re, mi, fa, sol, mi. Oh, it's just great. It's great writing. And I almost challenge you sometimes if you, I'm not a singer, so I do that. I make my students sing all the time, so I'm not uncomfortable singing for a video because I'm not a singer. I play the bass. If I were a singer, I'd probably do Instagram and YouTube videos on singing, but I play the bass. Anyway, but I think it's really important that we have the melody in our heads while we're playing these bass lines because And if you're a melody playing instrument, to know what the bass line is, because it does inform the other. And that's how we make music, and that's how these things work. Because if they aren't informed, it's actually the music is meaningless in a lot of ways. You could have a great melody without even realizing you have a great melody. Because there is no great melody without great harmony to support it. I think I will stand behind that statement because generally great melodies exist because we know what the harmonies are, and then we sing them with the harmonies in our head. But you could just have one line, and sure, you could do an a cappella tune with one line, but in the sense of music making and orchestral playing and all the fun stuff, all the parts play a role in making the eventual artistic product. So just remember that and think about the different voicings always going on, and sometimes it may not be in the bass, sometimes it might be how the seconds and violas interplay with that melody, how it all fits in, because that's what makes music. So I'm going to start digging in a little bit to the excerpt itself, and now that you hear the bass line, maybe I'll even play it with myself, play the melody with myself later on, and we can see what it sounds like. So we've already talked about how the bass line affects the melody, but now let's look at the melody on its own. We have this cascading line, C major scale, that stops on the G. And actually, one of the things I thought, someone told me that the only glissandi that Rachmaninoff wrote in his music was actually here. And I'm looking at the violin part and it's not here. Someone help me out. Maybe it's in another violin part. I should look it up. But it should, literally on those notes. Here. That I heard that actually had glissandi in it, but maybe it does not exist. But anyway, we have molto cantabile, so it should be sung, sung a lot. I'm trying to think of a fingering. Nobody's done turn there. So I think that the goal is I can make the arc of the phrase. Do, it starts do. Do, si, la, sol. And then he actually adds the with the diminuendo, which supports that theory of do, si, la, sol. So do, si, la, sol, la, si, la, sol, fa, mi. Because the E, that E minor is kind of the goal where we're headed, and happens to be the key of the piece, and takes away from C major. So bigger, and then decrescendo, crescendo, decrescendo. That figure, D, ya, D, D, da, D, sometimes you hear people talk about if you have a repeating figure, maybe you want to do it as an echo. Here, the notes are not the same. So you're like, well, it's not the same. But it is, because the rhythm is the same. Oh, I know, it's crazy to think about. So at the beginning, it starts with this tune, which we've already established. And then the second time that tune comes, after we've done this little echo thing, it actually has this little variation. And that variation it makes the motivic music more expressive. Because dee da 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 dee, ba dee da dee da ya da da ya da da, and he uses that same motif of this dee da da. Now it's part of this figure. So I'll explain even a little bit further. So we have. That's the first time. The second time it's and then it goes back to that antecedent part of the phrase. So these are the things you should try to pick up on when you're looking at melodies, because then you start to learn how to tell the musical story. And again, it's simple music, but there's actually a lot of stuff to say with this music. Then he has this little sequence. Well, where's he? Now, why am I always leaning on all these notes? Mi, fa, sol, la, si, fa, sol, la, si, do. Why am I leaning on those? Well, they act basically as appoggiaturas, but generally appoggiaturas come from the top, but in this case they come from the bottom, because they're if you know the bass line, mi, fa, sol, mi. That's not that is not the appoggiatura, but it is a dissonance. Ends up being a suspension. Mi, fa, sol, la, si, la. The A natural. La, si. Fa, sol, sol, la, si, do, because the C is a dissonance against the A natural, and it goes up to the do. Fa, sol, la, si, do, re, mi, and then it's all consonant from there. But then, once you know where the dissonances are, generally we lean into the dissonances and then we fall away in the consonants. So when you play it, you can exaggerate it. I'm not decided my bowings yet, but let's try that one more time. Appoggiatura. That's not an appoggiatura, but it actually ends up being like a leading tone. So it's neat how these little motivic figures are very functional in the fact that they act like an appoggiatura, in which case it's a dissonance, and then when it's more just a leading tone, but the motivic figure remains the same. Y'all, I love music, it's so great. Anyway, started from the E natural, so appoggiatura, and then the next appoggiatura, that's his leading tone, to the high E. So while I play the music, I can hear those dissonances with the bass line, and I can start to musically play with it. One of the things I always tell my students, and you may have heard me say a number of times, maybe on previous videos, but music is always going somewhere or coming from somewhere. Always, always, always. And the harmony generally dictates whether it's going or whether it's coming. And in music, we want to look for those places because they can help show us our line. The more you learn those nuances, the more you can start to play with the music and start to be more expressive. Because then when you lean on those appoggiaturas, they actually mean something. And then sometimes in one key, particularly in a sequence, it means one thing, and then as it goes to another key, it means another. These are all the little nuances that we use to help create and develop the music that we want to make and play. So I'm going to work on this now and see what kind of music I can make with this second theme from the second movement of Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. I don't like to stop. When I say stop, I don't like that my bow did something funny. I just don't like that feeling. Bowing, I ended up the wrong way. Let's try that one time.
So it feels good. I just have to get used to the bowing because again, one of the great things about belted out basses is because I actually get to play melodic stuff. In which case, it's interesting to have heard this melody for so long in my life, and now to play it and try to get all the nuances that I want to play. It's a neat little adventure. So right now, I'm just kind of feeling things out and getting a sense of what part of the bow I need to be in, making sure I get my bowings consistent so I can actually get the product that I want. And then it comes back. And whenever you have a tie over a bar line, that's where you really want to sing through. That's a really great opportunity. Long note is an opportunity. That's another big of my sayings. So with this long note, so you don't want the note to die away. You don't go, because it takes away the tension. But if you can maintain that tension, it makes the music far more interesting. So if I can play the right notes. Let's try that one more time. Sustain. Because the music is going to that C, La, Sol, and then you can really show that. Going to that next. Diminuendo. Back to piano. We start the sequence. Poco a poco. So what we don't want to do is really, really good, because he brings us to this really kind of, we've been expressive and then we come back. And then we've been expressive and then we come back. And instead of going expressive again, he kind of creeps up because it's piano and it's poco a poco, which means little by little. So we don't want to give it all, stay there, which actually makes it more beautiful. Because it's almost like you've expressed yourself. But then you realize, you come to a realization, whatever that is. This is musical storytelling. You come to realize it, and then you realize, oh, but I think if I start here, and then this is what I'm actually trying to say. So it's like you're searching. The first two phrases are almost like a search, and then the last time, when we have this piano poco a poco, it's almost like we're going to come to a realization. And the realization is not like a eureka. Generally, when you come to realization, it's like thought, and then you have your eureka moment. Let's see if we can find it. I'm totally making this up as I go, so I'll see if I can find my eureka moment in here. So we're gonna think. This is a beautiful suspension against over the bar line. So we this. So in this that motivic figure, I feel like is actually you being used to take us to our eureka moment. So sorry, my screen's about to go. Let's try it again. So poco. Now we're going to the, and now we're back to forte. And then, and what's interesting about this eureka moment is that the eureka moment is actually, I think, a place of not like revelation, or how can I say, it's not a happy revelation. It's actually a sad one, because it looks like we're going, we reach. So we're gonna reach, and then we're gonna reach again. We're gonna reach again, but then and we end up back in E minor. Which makes it actually a little sad, because we were looking for something, we thought we were about to have it, but then it kind of goes away. And then that's where Rachmaninoff leaves us. He's really good at doing that. He kind of can take our heart and like cover it in warm, soft clothing, and then just throw it on the floor. I don't know. I don't think Rachmaninoff would have such an extreme view on his music and his writing, but he can be very gut-wrenching in his writing. And I think the things that I've discussed leads to some of those feelings. So I'm gonna keep playing with this and see if I can get a recording of this that can eventually end up on Instagram as a belted out bassist, because it's such a beautiful tune. Such a beautiful tune. So I'm gonna play this a few more times. I'm gonna listen to myself and I'll let you know what I hear. So, my comments are bow distribution and taking my time with phrasing. It's getting pretty late at night in my building, and I think I'm just getting a little nervous about playing too late. So I'm a little anxious about trying to get this done. So I think that's coming across even in some of my run-throughs, but I will try to be in the moment and live and play this beautiful music as it was intended to be. Otherwise, I might have to do this actually make the recording another day. But we'll see if I can make this work. But generally, it's bow distribution, because our bows compared to a violin is quite short, because proportionally, if the bass bow was going to be the same length as a violin bow, it would be longer than our instrument, and that is not the case. So I just have to be super conscientious about my use of bows so I don't end up in a bad place and then have to compensate and do something awkward. So it takes a little forethought, which is always the case when we're playing any melodic material in any piece. And then I just have to really enjoy it more. I think there's some places where I can really feel Rachmaninoff, particularly in some of these turns and some of these suspensions. So I'm gonna work on that and see what happens. Here goes. Sorry, funny text. Okay.